Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. I'm Brian. I'm the host of the Left of Greg show. You're going to be watching the video version of our audio podcast. Please, guys, if you like the video, like it, subscribe to the channel. There's going to be more content down there if you're already a subscriber, and a better way for us to get you guys some more stuff. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them below. Check out our links down below to get a hold of us and to actually find out more places where you can get more information about this. Please like and subscribe. Follow us on Facebook at HBPRNA. Remember, all these cases that we discuss and all the discussions that we have are through the lenses of what we call human behavior, pattern recognition, and analysis. So please like it, share it, tell your friends about it, and we hope you enjoy the show. Thanks. Well, should be loud. Sorry.
That's probably a good thing.
All right, ready to get started?
Ready to go.
All right, everyone. So today it's just going to be myself and Greg again, and we're going to be talking about we're going to be talking about the 4 F's to start off, but we're going to talk about what's known as fight or flight, and the little known other F that's in there that a lot of people don't really talk about, which is freeze. So we've probably heard of the fight or flight response to different stressful situations and autonomic nervous system response. But a lot of people forget to mention the freeze. So I think, Greg, to start off, we should kind of go over what it specifically, 30,000 foot view, what we're talking about of the 4 F's. The 4 F's being fornicate, fight, feed, flee, right? So This is how my limbic system, remember that very primal system that we have that's still inside of every human being, that we've gotten from just adaptation over time, hundreds of thousands or millions of years actually, of keeping us, the human race, alive, right? So it's kept us alive this long, that limbic system. Now, we don't really use it as much, which is kind of gets into what our skill set and what we teach. We're not as, we don't, it's a little rusty. We've got a little bit of dust on it, but it's still there, right? So that limbic system will give us autonomic reactions to certain situations or stimuluses in my environment. And I can't really control that. That's going to happen. But it's all predicated on the 4 F's. And for anyone who's listening or going, well, that's not how humans are. We're talking about at a very biological level. We're talking about our limbic system of how I process my environment based on...
And at a primitive level.
At a very primitive level.
You've got to remember that our primitive wiring still exists. It did not go away.
No,
so
it's still there.
It rules. It clearly has an influence on how we deal with a situation.
So out of those 4 F's, there's obviously fornicate, and for fornicate, remember, is for the purposes of procreation. I need to procreate and continue the human species. Feed, obviously, for survival. I need to eat for survival.
Yep.
So when we get into fight or flight, that is once again for survival purposes. Ideally, it's going to be, if there's a threat in my environment, I want to flee. I want to get out of there at a very primal level. I only want to fight if I have to give me time or give me the situation to flee. Because once again, this is all about human survival at a very basic primal level. So all those little file folders are still in there. So one of the ones that we talk about is freeze, right? So we talk about that fight or flight response, but there's also a freeze response. And that's kind of going to be the overarching topic today that we're really going to deep dive out of the 4 F's and specifically out of the fight or flight system. So anything we want to add to that so far, Greg?
First of all, you're right on point as usual. And my thing for the listeners at home, for the people that are watching the podcast, do your homework. What we're doing is we're taking one of the 4 F's and we're going to flip the script and look at both sides of that same coin. We're going to look at it from science standpoint and from the standpoint of, so what? How is this going to help me avoid a dangerous situation? How is this going to help me avoid an incident of violence or a threat or workplace violence, which is so prevalent in society today? And we don't want to scare you because almost nobody wants to kill you, but we want you to understand that there's a lot of crap that's out there too. I'll give you an example. I'm so new to this whole pod and video and everything else, and I'm still the old school taking notes with the yellow pad. And so while I was looking at one of our podcasts to poke holes in it to make sure that we're coming across well, there was one there and it showed something about reading body language, and that's one of my things. Everybody goes, oh, you got to read body language. We have a kinesics component. We have body
that's
language, but it's one of 6.
Well, and on that, you, in order to be good at that, in order to understand that, there is a whole lot of information. You got to go big to small first.
Exactly, and so on this one, they were talking about the person with their arms crossed that you were encountering. And just like everybody else, they fall into the trap and they're going, oh, this person is hiding something. They're being protective. Listen, you have certain basic primitive comfort signals. Maybe you got it from being born in the embryo when you were not born yet, and the way that your twin brother his leg was up against your face, so you like the self-soothing stuff. You can't assign just this overall importance to a situation by throwing a dart at the map and saying it's just one thing. So that's why I wanted to make sure that we look today at flea, and we want to take a look at some of the cogs and some of the mesh that goes together with flea. And I'll give you an example that people don't like to talk about. We talk about training all the time, and people don't want to go to training, and they don't want to pay for training, and they think
Well,
we're doing
they want to go. Let's go to the gym, or let's go to the range, or let's do this, which is fine and
because
fun,
that's fun training.
exciting.
You get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Every time we go
Who doesn't?
to a SEAL team, they want to do the laser plasma cutting charges and the door booting and the car ramming. Nobody wants to sit for a lecture, but you got to do both.
Yeah.
You have to train the whole brain. And so what I would do is I would say, look up Rick Rescorla. Go back into your computer when we're done with the show and look up who he is and what he's done. And the reason I'm saying that is that there was a situation a couple of years back, and Rick predicted the situation very well. He was a security manager, security chief for Morgan Stanley at that time. And what he did is he, every couple of months, hosted a rehearsal to get everybody as quickly out of the South Tower as they could at a place called the World Trade Center.
Right.
And when an incident did actually occur, he was able to lead 2,700 of his fellow employees out of the gosh damn building in time that they didn't die. So why is that important? One, training changes behaviors. Two, if you don't repeat a process, you're not going to have muscle memory. Three, muscle memory is so little important compared to training the brain for advanced critical thinking. What is this event? What do I do? So the brain is predisposed to look out for your survival, but it's been retarded over the years because we can order a number 3 from a clown's mouth. So I want you to think just for a minute, everybody that comes to the climbing deaths in Colorado, the rafting deaths in Colorado happens every year. How many times have you seen it, Brian, on social media? These deaths due to selfie mischief, where the person's trying to get a good selfie of themselves.
And that's only increasing, by the way.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so what that is, Brian, is that in certain situations, we don't predict likely danger. And when we don't predict likely danger of a situation, what we end up doing is we skip phases like denial, sequencing, channel capacity. We skip key predictive factors of danger and violence, and we completely go to the stage of hyperarousal. And hyperarousal, or the acute stress response, is the situation that leads us to perform human performance is poor, or to get PTSD. And I'll give you an example of that.
So real quick too, even before you get to that, because just to relate it to everyone listening to that,
the lighting is terrible in here.
Yeah, it's not so much the lighting on you, Greg, as it is.
Is it the gigantic head? Could that be the problem?
So that might be the problem. No, but it goes to just those autonomic reactions, right? So if anyone's ever had like a startle response when someone jumps out, your hands go up, or you jump back, or you may hit that person. There's hilarious videos on YouTube to that of people, just someone jumps out to scare them and they punch them in the face, all that stuff. So just so everyone, a reference point for everyone. If I haven't trained for that situation, I'm going to go instinctively, and my limbic system can take over, and it's going to do whatever it's going to do, right?
Precisely. And remember, violence, our primitive instincts include violent encounters. So when we are faced with an unknown situation, we're more likely to go to violence, meaning that rage response is completely something I understand. Because I know that when that person ends up on a blank file folder and all of a sudden things are, even a situation where somebody makes fun of you, somebody bumps into you, somebody says something, hey, wide load, beep, beep, or something, and all of a sudden you go to immediate anger. Mm-hmm. The reason is that we have a very weak ego system now because we're not tested anymore. We don't have part task training. We don't have practical application. We didn't have to fight a cougar on the way home from work. So the more that those are pushed towards the back, and the more we think we can think ourselves out of it, the more we fool ourselves. So those selfie deaths are from people not predicting the danger in the situation that they're in. So by not doing that, and by talking about the situation with the World Trade Center, what prompted me to this is fire drills are a perfect example of a thing that can save your life. And either we don't do them, or we don't do them frequently enough. Flea is a good thing. Flea is a genetic, it's a primitive trigger that is designed to get us out of harm's way. So read a great thing in American Medical Journal, an AMA journal. In the AMA journal, somebody asked a question, and it was about, hey, listen, with the sympathetic and the parasympathetic systems, why is it that people say that you're going to poop yourself or urinate yourself in a stressful situation when in fact that's a parasympathetic? Now you're what you're doing is
Yeah.
mixing metaphors. You're throwing junk science together. Look, when your body ramps up for fight or flight, one of the things that happens is sphincter control. Some sphincters slam shut to contain areas, just like on the hold of the Lusitania, or the bad example,
Oh, bad
of a
example.
ship.
Bad example.
And the Titanic, bad example. Sorry for those people that are dead, but you get what I'm
Jeez.
saying, Aaron.
Well,
But
I think where you're
from,
from, where your family's from, they celebrate those ones, right?
no
At least
offense.
the Lusitania.
No offense. At least half the family does. But the idea is that you got to understand that they're trying to compartmentalize. Now, there's another part of your brain that's intrinsically trying to separate you from that threat, and that's the one that's saying, I need to jettison the ballast, so the urine and the defecation has to happen. And I might also not appeal to this person, animal, beast, or anything else. If I smell bad enough and am covered in my own feces, maybe they don't want to eat me. And those type of things are the things that we don't think about. Listen, when you think fight, okay, that's a normal reflexive action. Of course, that's going to happen in the way humans are triggered. Flee, totally understand that. But what if you freeze? So there's a couple of types of freeze, and
Right.
if you're thinking at home about, well, what do you mean by a couple of types of freeze? There's three that I've identified, and I bet that there's probably more. And you actually brought up one that seems like one that could fall into that too. And the idea is that first of all, nobody talks about the freeze response. If you try to go online and look at it, they may do a passing thing. So if you have your immediate danger and sympathetic and parasympathetic, then all of a sudden you get the idea that freeze is one of the things that you're going to choose. So you've got Tyrannosaurus Rex. I call it the Jurassic Park one. Okay, maybe if I don't move, you're going to lose interest with me, and you're going to walk by. You remember that in the movie?
Again, and that's a primal reaction too. You see that in animals too, right?
Yeah,
the deer. I've never hunted
deer
an animal
do that
before in my life, but they stop, right?
Precisely. And so they're going to think, hey, and do you remember our good friend and advisory board member and our sergeant at arms, Eric Collier, is a fellow scout sniper. Do you remember where he does the freeze and he drops down?
The melting,
Totally melting makes sense though, because it's one of the types of freeze, right? So
your eye being attracted to light, motion, and edges. Freeze is a natural.
And you only have a 6-degree functional field of view. So now you understand Tyrannosaurus Rex at Jurassic Park. Mm-hmm. Second one is the ostrich freeze. Okay, listen, I can't make you disappear, so I'm going to disappear. And you've seen people at horror movies do that. Yep. You've also got to understand that that's kind of almost the last thing that you're going to do before you flee. And then you've got the autonomic freeze, and that's the holy shit, I am paralyzed by fear and I can't move. Now, if you think about that one, there's no file folder that comes up. You don't resort to violence. And what your body gets flooded with is the endorphins. Now you've got the chemical cocktail, the catecholamine group that's coming in. And what it's trying to do is it's trying to issue painkillers to you, preparing for that strike, preparing for that stab, preparing for that shot. And people that are watching have probably, and they're horrible, don't see violent stuff. It's not worth it. But you've probably seen a videotape of a beheading or somebody that's led into a place and then they shoot them or do something. And you go, why didn't the person fight back? That's why. And that's all three of the ones that I discussed. And the Collier, let's call the fourth, the melting. All of those, training can overcome those biases. Those psychological and physiological biases can be overcome with training. So if we rehearse for an event and if we have realistic training and we don't go to hyperarousal, we can actually fight back. We can choose which one that we want in a situation. We can have a couple ready for likely situations. Does that make sense? And that's what I want our viewers to get out of this one today, Brian.
Yeah, and so if what you're saying, if I'm understanding what you're saying, is that the freeze one, what fight or flight is going to be, I'm at least I'm doing something. I'm trying to fight my way out of the situation. I'm getting out of there. But that freeze, which can happen, is obviously sounds like the most dangerous because I'm doing nothing.
Exactly.
And doing nothing during a situation is obviously.
And I just described 3 or 4 ways of doing nothing that can get you dead right now. So let's talk about physiologically. Let's talk about the way
Right, because you keep going. Well, how do I get to this? Why does
yeah,
this happen? And then some people have certain reactions, and some people have others, which goes into training and experience. But then, how does this actually happen? Why do I
and
get to that
nature
level?
and nurture.
Right,
You're
which is
exactly right. You're on the
experience.
right
Yeah,
track.
right, right.
So let's talk. It's experience. It's a different with a distinction
Mm-hmm.
scientifically. So
Yeah,
let's talk about kids. Kids haven't formed their amygdala yet. They have an
right.
amygdala and it's fully formed. Don't get me wrong. Don't get what I'm saying wrong.
Yeah,
What I'm
yeah,
trying to say though is that its trigger motions and its release of chemicals are completely internal and have nothing to do with the kid's experience because he has none. So therefore, a child and a young person, a young human, okay, their first response on the scale that you talked about is not fornicate because that doesn't make sense. That's a
right.
blank.
They
That's a
they
tabula
haven't.
rasa,
They're
baby.
not old enough yet.
So
Right.
what they'll do is they'll freeze. So a kid, when a kid is petrified, will freeze and they will stand still. I don't know if you just saw that yellow jacket or whatever that just went by my head. So if I go fleeing a little later, it's for the EpiPen. Eh? But the idea is that if you think about that for a minute, Brian, because they don't know how to sense fear or predict likely outcomes, because they don't have spirals, they don't have that wiring, even though they
They
do
don't
have the
have the
wiring
file
for
folders.
bad and good.
Yeah.
That's why. Have you ever seen a kid? Halloween's coming up. Halloween mask on. Dad or mom, somebody that they know. They're screaming. Tip the mask up. It stops. They put
Right.
the mask down. Okay, that's
And
because
they
that
don't like wearing
amygdala.
it at first too. Right.
You got it. So they
Yeah.
need to see that mask, and they'd rather wear it up on their head and
Up on their
shit.
head, you'll see some little
Yeah,
kids do that, and they're like, "No, I'm okay with it up here, but not down on my face. I'm not sure
exactly,
what's
because
happening."
I
Yeah.
don't know what that means, but I know that it's like climbing the rope at gym class. I get a funny feeling. Okay, and the idea behind that funny feeling is in a kid, the kid doesn't know what it is, so the kid will freeze. Now, I'll give you the example. Once an amygdala starts to form, domestic violence at home, the kid now knows what's going
Yeah.
on, so they're going to run and they're going to hide. Which, right back to our fire example, what if it's a fire and the kid now is at the point where they're going to freeze or they're going to flee and hide in the bathroom? Now
Yeah.
they're in the bathtub and the firemen can't get them out. I was in a Safeway the other day, and Dog and I go, our CEO of the company, Shelly Williams, and I go so early shopping in the morning that nobody else is around. So it's at 6, it's still dark outside, 13 degrees and the polar ice caps. And I'm walking through the store, and there's a woman that has her daughter, and I'm like, wow, that's very unusual. They must be going
Unusual.
camping or hunting or something. So the daughter was the free spirit. So the daughter was dancing around by the vegetable aisle.
Yep.
Then she went over here and there. The funniest thing in the world is she got too far from mom. Now the legs got stiff, the
Yep.
back got a little bit arched, and she's walking down and looking down each row, walking down, looking, and now the petrification starts. And you could see that she's going
Starting to
internal. Oh
tense
my
up.
God,
Yep.
what do I do? She gets almost to the end of the aisle that's parallel to the food aisles, and mom says, Alicia, or whatever her name was, oh my God, you could see she completely relaxed, turned around and skipped all the way back to mom. That kid can't explain to you and me what just happened, but what just happened is all of a sudden, now my tunnel vision, now my auditory exclusion, oh my gosh, I might be a victim. That's fear, buddy. And,
Yeah.
and so if we can manage fear, we can manage rage. If we can manage fear, we can manage our freeze response. So you're not going to be able to get away from a startle response. Things surprise us, but things surprise us to what, Brian? To protect us. So
Right.
that's
And
what we're talking about here. How can I channel this and use it as a protection mechanism?
so that I think that's a perfect way of putting it. Or for people to think about it, it's to protect you. So
Yes.
now your file folders or experiences might be different. So this is because you alluded to it earlier when you started talking about PTSD and how that can form and
Oh yeah.
different ways that it can form and through different life experiences that someone has. But that's just it. If that system kicks in where we've all felt it, where we get that fear, the catecholamines start kicking, so I get a little bit of that cortisol in my stomach, right? That feeling in the pit of my stomach, right? My heart rate, my respiration might increase a little bit. My body starts sending that blood to major muscle groups. All of
Exactly.
a sudden, I get laser focused on what I'm doing. My attention goes to the immediate area or what I see as a potential threat. So that can happen based on my limbic system picking up and going, there's some type of danger in your environment. There's arousal in here that I'm not sure of.
Danger, warning, Will
And,
Robinson. It's
and
screaming at you.
and now that arousal can come from whatever that warning may be, what we call, kind of, we like to refer to as a corrupt file folder, right?
Yep.
So meaning I'm getting it out of a situation where I shouldn't, or isn't normal, or hasn't met that threshold where I'm in a survival situation. But
Yes.
because of my past experiences in life, maybe I'm hyper vigilant, or I'm more prone to this because of some experience I've had before. So you with that girl right there, that is likely an encounter of, she's young, she's
Yes.
normally within eyesight of mom, especially if they're in a place that they're not comfortable with. So she's not at school, right? She's
Yep.
in a
And
supermarket.
remember, this is an austere environment, very antiseptic. No people are around. You get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
It was just her and mom. Now the echoes start building. It's still dark outside. You see how that can
So
form, Brian? You
so
see in her mind how that can form?
so that observation of her starting, that fear starting to kick in, and then once she sees mom, it's okay, that's explained. Now that's
Yes.
different if she's having that same behavior and she's with mom or something, and then dad or someone else comes in the picture and you start to get that same response. That's completely
Okay,
different.
so now Uncle Paul walks in the room. It's a family reunion, and you see one of the kids, the little Jimmy, the cousin. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Immediately starts to stiffen, and you see the fear that's going on. Okay, it could be something as benign and simple as that uncle always squeezes that kid's cheek when they see him.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yep.
Or it could be pedophilia and sexual assault. You don't know, because you got to have context and relevance and
Yes.
measure the knowns against the unknowns. But it's a starting point, Brian. That's what I'm trying to say here. So one of the things that you've seen, one of the things that I've seen, and many of our viewers will have this experience, is hopelessness. I remember seeing it in Iraq. I remember seeing it in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
We were in a situation that I won't mention the place, but we both certainly saw it at the same time, and you knew what that feeling was. That abject, hopeless feeling is what can lead to PTSD and these type of incidents. Because what happened is, you thought you had a plan, you thought you were going to go through with something, and all of a sudden the emergency occurred, and now your friend is dead, or your friend is in the hospital, or something has occurred. In your brain tries to give you snippets through chemical and electric neurochemical transmitters. You're getting these flash bulbs that are going off, and they're giving you a piece of the rewinded video over and over and over. And when you smell that, and when you hear that scream again, you go, oh my God, my buddy turned into ballistic gelatin, and I did nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
So you think, hey, listen, I was hopeless. I wasn't helpless, because I could have done something, but hopeless. I did not come up with a conclusion. So part of PTSD is you fighting to get you back. And so what you're trying to do is say, what if I had a successful resolution? What if I would have done these? And by getting professional help, or at least going through training, what you're going to find out is there are certain things you can't control, but you have to understand, and you have to name them. And so as you start aging through the process, and now you start having this palette of choices, let's call it, you have unconscious choices and conscious choices. So if your autonomic register doesn't have enough depth, then what's going to happen in an emergency situation is you're going to respond. Have you ever, everybody in the audience, have you ever seen anybody just dancing around like a chicken during an emergency, and you're going, hey,
Not.
what's this
Yeah.
guy
What do
doing?
yeah.
So he's doing the lead follower, get the hell out of the way. No, he's doing, I don't know what to do, so my
Yeah.
body is going to respond with this nervous energy. You can't let yourself go there. And I can guarantee you, when shots are fired, when somebody pops yellow smoke, when those two cars ram you, and now all of a sudden they're grabbing your daughter out of the back seat, that's where you're going to be if you don't have an appropriate level of training. If you don't, Shelley said it the other day about mental rehearsal. Hey, how many times do we rehearse for these off-duty situations? How many times, Brian, you added, and rightly so, listen, we prepare for the deployment, we prepare for the combat, but we never prepare for the uncombat, the coming back, the flight home. Do you get what I'm saying? And that's where PTSD starts to lamprey in and attach to your unconscious mind.
Yeah, and there's I mean, we can go through countless examples from personal life
Sure.
on how that works, but the idea is that I think it's important to note that these are autonomic reactions, right? So
Yes.
meaning I can't control them. So you can't control them. If you have some weird that if you're that person that you froze, look, you didn't have a file folder for what was happening, or you became so overwhelmed that you couldn't control that. And it took maybe someone in that situation to slap you on the back of the head and go, hey man, what's going on here? Get in the fight. I need you to do
Yeah.
this, or whatever. And it doesn't even have to be something that chaotic, meaning because then what happens too is you go, man, they look back and go, man, I didn't do anything. Like I didn't know what to do. And that PTSD can come from that, where they're now
Exactly.
mentally beating themselves up, so to speak, to go, well, wait a minute, I did nothing, or I sat there while this happened.
I sat
And
back and watched. I should have intervened. I should
yeah,
have done something. And the guilt. Yep.
and so it's one of those things that can happen. And like you said, if you don't have a plan, or if you haven't been through those experiences before, is that freeze part is huge. So not just, there's other issues that lead to, what people call PTSD, and those are which like almost everyone has in some form or
Yes.
fashion.
Everybody we know.
Well, but it can happen if you get, anyone who gets in a bad car crash and then is scared to drive.
Yep.
That's you have PTSD from that experience. Welcome to the
Yep.
club. Come on in. The water's warm. But
Exactly.
meaning you can work through that. You can deconstruct that event, separate the emotion from the event, and learn what's autonomic reactions and what your body did versus what you might not have had a conscious choice in the matter. And then you can go.
You're making it sound so simple, and you
No,
and I both know that there's some of our friends.
Well,
there's some of our friends that would drink a bottle of Maker's
but
Mark
that's what I'm
play
saying.
Russian
Yeah,
roulette with an automatic, right? So
I can make it sound simple because it's personal and I know how to deal with it. It took years and years to learn that, and go, oh, wow.
And I'm trying to deconstruct it every time we're together, right?
I know.
Poke.
And then, but I think that goes into what you're getting back with the 4Fs and have it being part of our limbic system.
So let's talk about that for a minute. And you're right on again, but people sometimes don't understand the autonomic nervous system is an unconscious. You remember the fight that we had that one day out in the West Coast, where somebody says unconscious means asleep. Do me a favor, get back to school, break open that book.
Okay.
Generally, it's from left to right and from up to down. But the idea is that autonomic nervous system is doing the stuff, the maintenance stuff that you don't do on your own. So it's regulating your heart rate, your digestion, your respiration, your pupil, your all forms of external arousal that are happening, the blinking, the swallowing. Those are things that if you consciously paid attention to that background program that was going, it would drive you insane. Would you agree?
You wouldn't be able to focus on anything.
Then if you have the autonomic reflex systems that are handling those are broken up into two very different sides of the coin. And that's why I always try to put it into the same coin. You've got sympathetic and parasympathetic. So for example, if you've ever hit anybody in the common peroneal and you saw them collapse because you hit them in the right leg and their left leg collapsed, doing the wrestling and screw around, will be around with your buddy trying to knock them out. Well, what happens is that sometimes the brain reads those signals and goes, oh, I understand what you want me to do, and sends it parasympathetically or sympathetically to another part of the body. So if you want to liken it to good and evil, sympathetic is the fight or flight side, and then parasympathetic is the, okay, now it's time to go back home and rest and relax and digest what just happened side. If you're in a corrupt file folder, that means that you don't have control of the blend of yin and yang. Does that make sense? And that's also going to lead to PTSD. So your fight response is built in. But if you're a little kid, you're not going to fight. You're just going to go numb. Painkillers are going to hit. The endorphins are specifically designed with the catecholamine groups and stuff like dopamine. That's why we're smoking the dope, to make you desensitized and drift away. You don't want to see that horrific incident. People go, well, why couldn't they remember it? Because guess what? There was so much of a coma cocktail in their brain at the time. It was designed so they couldn't see their daughter die or their kid go up in flames. Does that make sense? So if fight is a natural response, but we don't go there, then we still have flee. But if you're not thinking about fleeing, or you're not a track star, or maybe you've got an injury that precludes you from running, then if freeze is your only option, I'm trying to tell you, I don't think that's enough. I think for freeze, for a little kid, it might be enough. He might have psychological damage and need help later on. But kids normally have protectors. But what about an adult? If you don't rehearse for an event, and that event gets you to OBE quickly,
right? That's
okay. I think freeze is a challenge.
I think that's kind of a good thing to maybe clarify what you mean, or not clarify, but just, you said if I don't train for an event, but you're like,
yes.
Well, great, I might not hit. How do I train for every event? But what you mean is just if I don't become if I become overwhelmed by the
Yes.
situation I'm in. So just a lack of awareness, right? Just staring
Okay.
at your
So
phone and
complacency.
something. Yes,
Yeah.
that's what
Okay.
can lead to it. Even if you are that trained opponent, if you're down not paying attention, and all of a sudden a situation presents itself, if you haven't done, you might not be
Yep.
able to handle it, right? You might go into that freeze. And so that kind of gets into, all right, well, how do I self-regulate this, or how do I guess what you would
Exactly.
call front load my response, right? How would I have those, like we have different responses for, like I've talked about it on one of the other podcasts. When a guy, I can tell he's going to walk up and ask for money, I've got 7 or 10 things that I'm already ready to go with, right?
Some
So
are smart, Alec.
most of them are.
Some, right. I know you well enough, but I've also seen serious Brian a couple of
Yeah,
times
well, because you got
where
to
it's
know if that's what you're
no,
dealing with.
don't,
Yeah.
don't. And
Yep.
and that person immediately
Before they get to me. Yeah.
knows, hey, I'm not the guy. Go to
And
the
but
next guy.
that's because I'm usually dealing with some situation where I can feel that scale is creeping up on myself, and I'm starting to get a little overwhelmed by what I'm dealing with, and I
Yeah.
know that one more thing on my plate is going to send me over. So it's very simple. Nope, not can't do it right now.
So
No.
it's self-soothing
Yes.
and offered in protection of the general public, because
Yes, because
you know
someone's
that
just
it may
gonna
be like
lash
a
out.
the Leonid meteor shower is coming
Yeah,
in.
because the
No.
overreaction is gonna be, oh, my bad, guys. That was way was a huge overreaction. But no, but that's what it comes down to,
Exactly.
is how do I self-regulate that? How do I get myself prepared to not become OBE? And that's a
Well,
daily thing. I mean,
here's the thing. The best people in the world at this still need training. So take a look at your law enforcement professionals. Take a look at your firefighters. Take a look at your emergency medical personnel or your emergency room personnel. Your instinct. Let's go back to that. And you see a person that gets injured in a horrific situation. I'll give you one. It seems like every year in Mayo, Michigan, or someplace in the Midwest where they have silage and they store like manure for
yeah,
different things. Methane gas builds up in some of these containers, and somebody's there cleaning them out, and confined space entry occurs, and all of a sudden they're overcome by the fumes. A loved one sees that person, who's now deceased, by the way, because there's no
yeah.
available oxygen, and the heavy gases have taken the place of the oxygen. There's no chance at getting them out of there alive at this point. What does that person do? Do they stop, look, and listen? Do they stop, drop, and roll? Do they think? No, they go down to help save that person. So if the smartest of us and family members and farmers that know this is going to
Yeah, that
happen,
know that
well,
stuff, right?
so how do we overcome it? We have to overcome it with training. Education is not enough. A sign on the wall saying danger, confined space entry is not enough. So we have to have a plan. Brian, there has to be an architecture for your mind to select off the
Right.
menu.
So
And we provide that in training, and many places provide that in
right,
training.
and that's actually a good explanation of why we do certain training that people forget, or they don't even, oh, this is just something we've always done. Okay, you know
Yeah,
why you do a fire drill in school every quarter? Because
exactly.
a long time ago, a whole buttload of kids died in school fires, and someone went,
Yes.
hey, we should probably do something about this. And then not only got better in terms of training, but how they built materials and how they built this and
Exactly. And
so
the costumes for Halloween.
right.
And you know what? If you're listening to us and you're a security manager, we've got a varied audience.
We
Mostly, I
do.
think, prisoners and federal
Yeah, well, it's
corrections.
weird because it's like a lot of criminals and then a lot of law
I'm thinking, but
enforcement.
the idea is, if you
No.
think about it, Brian, if you're a professional and you're just trying to listen and have fun, but learn something, what would your first fire drill look like? Your first fire drill is getting everybody out without hurting themselves or killing themselves,
Yeah.
and showing up at a rally point and counting heads to make sure everybody got out. Yeah. Okay. What would your second one look like?
Right. You
Well,
have
your
to build
second
on
one
that.
has got to be, I'm going to build on that
Mhm.
time. And then I'm going to build on cooperation and communications, for example. What would your third one look like? Well,
Right.
now I'm not worried about time anymore, but this time I'm going to throw in what's called a confound in science. I'm going to block a door.
Yep.
Now that door is blocked. How does that work with your plan? And guess what? I'm going to show them what right looks like. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
Right.
Because you remember the death house? We talk about this many
Yeah.
times, where everybody died in that scenario.
There's a training scenario where just everyone goes in there and they just die.
We went
Like,
up and we said, okay, so what's the
this
point? Because some things you just can't live through. Shut up. Shut up. Because
like you're
if you
training.
give people that choice, that's where you'll
That's
end
where
up.
they're
You get
ending
what I'm
up.
saying?
Yeah.
So
They're
my
gonna go.
point,
This is the one they were talking about,
that's it.
boys. We're done.
So you have to
Yeah.
think Do you want to be the Donner Party or do you want to be the dinner party? You have to think about your
or
own
the
survival. And you
dinner
get what I'm
dinner
saying.
party at the Donner Party.
That's what I'm saying, man. You got to get yourself
So,
into a position where you say, what is the most important thing for me and my kids? Now, Sean's always telling us about
well,
the
yeah,
limited objective experiments he
it's
does with his kids. I'm telling you that if you don't and you don't get to training, what you're going to do is you're going to create a corrupt file folder, Brian. And that means you're going to do nothing. Either you're going to do something wrong or you're going to do nothing.
right. And we spend a whole pot on the what if game in
Yep.
training and how to do it properly. But to go back to kind of the fight, flight, freeze aspect. So how does that pertain to rage? Like how does that
Yeah,
pertain
yeah,
to these guys that
yeah. So
like
you're exactly right.
the workplace shooters, the people that just
You
the guy the guy who gets cut off driving and now he's shooting out the window doing 70 miles an hour.
you don't know when and where your cup is going to become full. So
You
walking
don't know
around
where
with your cup.
yours or someone you're talking to.
I'm saying that. I'm
Oh, I got
saying
a good
yeah.
example. Yeah,
So here's my thing.
yeah.
You don't know how full your cup is at any one time,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't live in a vacuum. So as you're
Mm-hmm.
moving around, you're trying not to spill your cup, and you're bumping into people. Guess what? A little of theirs spills. Sometimes theirs spills into yours. Sometimes yours spills into theirs. But there's a point, a trigger point, a smell, a look, a feel, a taste. I'll give you a perfect example of a physiological trigger point, Brian. I was an expert witness at a use of force trial, and I don't want to get so detailed, so somebody goes and looks it up. But the idea was one person was choking another. The person that they were choking
Yeah.
so fought back
Yes.
violently
Yeah.
that they hurt a bunch of people, and they were going, "Oh, it's attempted this, and it was this, and it was malicious."
No.
No, it was a
You,
complete physiological response
yes.
to trying to prevent being choked out. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so there's a whole bunch of case law for that.
Right.
So that's an autonomic reflex, an autonomic response to your survival system being choked. So now all of a sudden you're in the room and you've got a guy. This is normally a situation with workplace violence. You got a guy or a female that's at your work that's been promoted, and they've got a tremendous amount of power and authority, but they don't have a lot of acumen and intellect with dealing
Yeah.
with people in social situations. So they wield that Harry Potter's wand and ordain things to be done. So you've had your cup filled today over and over a couple of times. Somebody stole your lunch in the lunchroom. All of these things are happening, and you don't want to fight. You just want to be left alone. And then there's the amazing and another thing. You hear that from somebody. Well, and another thing,
Yeah.
Johnson. And guess what? Now your cup is completely full. And what's the very first level that you get to? You get to rage. Why do you get to rage? Because I have to fight back. And I've been dealt with it, listen, from my dad smacking me down and my mom smacking me down and the kids picking on me in school and everything else. What you've done is you've painted me into a corner, and I'm going to fight back viciously.
It,
You can avoid that. You can see that happening in another person and
well,
use
that
de-escalation strategies.
and that's exactly what I was hoping you get to is that identifying this in someone else. So because you
Yes.
kind of alluded
But
to stuff at the
tell your story, though. I know you
yeah,
have a
yeah, yeah.
story.
Because this is where I'm going with that. Is that telling this in someone else? Because you just got into where people talk. They always
Yep.
ask us, "That's what's the most popular thing?" Oh, teach us more about the body language.
Yep.
We're teaching you that right now. If I can identify someone who's in that fight, flight, freeze spot, well, that's going to determine how I deal with that individual. I'm at the gym last Saturday morning. All right, so Saturday morning it gets crazy. We try to get in there early, but we got the kids, so the kids club thing where they watch good doesn't open till 8, so
Yep.
we can't even get there till 8. So that's the earliest. So we get in there. It's just busy Saturday morning. Normally I'm there 05 during the week, and it's like only a few people.
And I'm pinging you. I'm
Yeah,
already
I know,
texting
and
you.
I'm already like, hey, can I get my workout in? You are in a
Exactly.
different time zone, Greg.
I
So
haven't figured that out yet, by the way.
but same thing. Guys in there working out on this. I think he's done. I go to there's one of the weight stacks and there's a pull-up bar over it, so I got to do my weighted pull-ups, and he's over there doing his rope press down things or whatever.
And you've got your little steps so you can get up to 5 feet.
so
I've worked out with you.
if I do a running jump, I can reach the pull-up. No, so I'm over there, and he walks away, so I think he's done, but I'm not even using what he's using. I'm using the pull-up bar. So I get up there to hit my pull-ups. I set the weight down. And then I see him. He comes walking over to that thing, and I was trying to tell him, like I was trying to do the point up, like, hey, I'm using the pull-up bar because he's got his headphones on and he's looking down and he's looking angry. But that's kind of a baseline for a lot of guys in the gym. So I can't
Yep.
really go off of that. He
Yep.
looks at me just up in the air with his hands and takes the straight bar, metal bar that he's about to attach to it and throws it on the ground and
There you go.
storms.
So
So
there's two
he's
two things going on right now.
yeah.
Exactly.
So he's immediately OBE. He's so
Yep.
overwhelmed. So now us doing
But
what we do.
for you at home, wait, because
Yeah.
there's more. Go.
Right. So obviously for us, me, I'm doing the MD COA. Okay. So this guy's just angry because it's busy and he can't get his workout in, and he's kind of he's emotionally unstable, and that's going to throw him off. Or B, this guy's glass is full. I don't know
Yep.
anything about him, his life, what's
Yep.
happened. Maybe his wife just left him for the
Yep.
neighbor. He just got fired. And you know what?
And he walked
This
in
is
on
it.
her with the chin-up bar. You're right.
This
exactly.
is it. And now he goes to his gym bag and he pulls
Yep.
out whatever and he starts shooting.
And it's bang, 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 bang. You don't know.
Exactly. And you don't know. So it's just that sustained observation. I'm not just going to go about my business. I'm certainly not going to escalate the situation because I don't know where this guy's at. And there's another guy next to me who saw it and is laughing at the guy going like, he can't handle it. I'm going, well, he's the first to go if something happens.
You got it.
And then I'm next. So maybe I got a chance. But that's the whole point of me dealing with it. It's going, where is this likely going to go? So through sustained observation, he walked out. There's a little outdoor part you can because it's Southern California, so you can work out outside too all year round. So he comes back in, and so I continue with my thing, but I'm keeping an eye on him. I'm still doing my workout, but I'm going, all right, what's happening? Am I grabbing McKaylee and we're getting out of here? Is this guy amping up or has he come back down? Then
Time to find a new gym.
Yeah, so then I see him shake his head and take his headphones off and walk over with what? Now his head's down and he's got the puppy
So
dog.
before he's even there, he's going to say, sorry, I overreacted.
Yep.
I was a
and
little
that's
juiced.
Exactly what he did. He said, hey, man, it's not you. I'm just pissed. It's so effing busy in here. I can't get a workout in. So I gave him the fist bump like, hey, brother, all good. No worries. Like, we good. He's like, yeah, I'm so sorry. And he was at that point now embarrassed for his actions, which most people would be, right?
Yeah, of course.
So he went through that range of emotion. So
my thing is, don't have definitive lines. This goes to this, goes to this. So your fire drill must be 1, 2, 3 minutes, or you failed to get your certification. That's not what this is about. This is about measuring everything based on the context and the relevance of what you're seeing. Here's the thing. If a person has poor coping skills and a person is getting there much too soon, your human instinctual response is going to be to close with that person and use logic. I would tell you to shut up, because what you're going to do is your logic is going to sound just like their dad or their mom, and your finger in their face trying to explain it is going to get you punched in your face.
Yeah.
The idea is you have to be able to read that person. If that person's emotional register is off the chart for the baseline of what experiences you should expect, then it's an incongruent signal. And anytime you get an incongruent signal, give yourself the gift of time and distance. Now, you can be at this distance over here going, sorry, pal, I thought you were done. That's a beautiful de-escalation.
Yep.
Now I'll give you the worst possible de-escalation. What did you say? Okay, that's horrific.
That's not
or,
good.
dude, chill.
Yeah.
Or relax.
That's always good.
So what you've just done is you've just polarized somebody to the point that you're going to get your car rammed or keyed, or somebody's going to spit in your lunch.
Yeah, it's the sit down, Francis.
Go along to get along. Yeah, exactly. But what I'm trying to say is, don't put me in that gosh darn box. Don't paint me into that corner. Yeah. So most people want their say rather than their way. So let them rant, let them blow off a little bit of steam. Here's my thing. Be prepared to kneecap him and take him out of the game.
Absolutely.
If he escalates past a point that you think, and people ask me that all the time, so what's the point? I go, well, if I was sitting in a restaurant or a bar with my family and you came up and you did something that was so egregious that I had to leave my meal or family to step up, that's the line. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Maybe, Brian, the line is different for you because you've been homeless for so long. Maybe the line, you get what I'm trying to say? Unloved, Brian, is what we call it in the business. But the idea, hopeless, the idea is that if you start thinking about this, it's not that hard. One, balled up fists are never a good sign. Okay? That orthognathic ridge coming down and corrugator muscles are activated. The other thing is red or pale. Red or pale means something because that blood is kicking and those chemical cocktails are going. So you've got electrochemical neurotransmitters that are now functioning in the background. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Dropping the stuff in my hand, blading your body towards the person, doing what I'm doing with my head. Those fidgeting things means you got way too much danger, warning, OBE is coming. So distance yourself from that person. Your instinct of I'm going to go and hug it out with this person, that's not the time and the
No,
place for it.
no,
As a
it's
matter of fact, start distancing yourself and getting things in between you. Because
yes.
now you can find foreign objects to bring into the ring, or you can try to de-escalate with your lips. But language, okay, I'll give you a great indicator. When somebody starts going, but, okay, that's my old man right there. When you lose the function of speech, that means you've gone primitive
Mm-hmm.
10,000 years into the
From
past,
anger, yeah,
and you're going to start doing the Clarice Starling and Silence
yeah,
of the Lambs. You
yeah.
got to look out for those cues. And great allegory, because your guy showed all of those.
Well, he
But then
showed
he showed a
yes,
de-escalation. So he was able to come back to advanced critical thinking and go, hey, I overacted. I was
yeah,
hyper alert to this situation.
which takes a lot for that to
Today it does. Yeah,
for
yeah,
that
it
to
does.
happen, to come
Applaud
off
to
the
that
gas
guy.
like that. That's what I'm saying. So
Hey, if you're
now,
watching, dude, from the
yeah.
gym, and you
So
recognize Meerkat,
so,
don't show up at his night tonight like a prowler with the
but
knife.
that's the
I
but
can
that's the
see it
other thing.
happening right now tomorrow in the news.
And a
Say
lot of
these
this is,
times
don't get me wrong, it's for me, this is 100% self-preservation. Right now I have
Marin,
someone who
you're
I
scared
can,
all the time. I get
I'm
it.
terrified. So I have this guy now who's I'm more like, I can now co-opt if I'm in that
Yes.
situation. Now I can go, this guy
And
feels like
you
he
got
owes me
another guy
one.
to throw under the bus. Do you
Yeah.
remember? Hey, pal,
He
he
was
laughed
laughing
at you.
at you.
Exactly.
So here's the thing. Yeah, if you have someone to co-opt, I go
Yep.
back to the for any time you're dealing with any folks like that. I go back to that Adam Sandler movie Billy Madison, I think, where he calls up Steve Buscemi, and he's like, "Hey, remember that time when I made fun of you?" And everyone, I
Exactly.
feel really bad about that. And I
Sorry
just want
about
to,
that, man.
and he looks up at his people to kill list, and he crosses his name off and sits down on the couch like, "Hey, I'm glad that guy called." But that's the
Exactly.
thing, is you don't know what you're running into. So when I can
Yep.
identify, if you already know what we're talking about with the 4 Fs, and you're talking about or fight, flee, or freeze, and you've seen that or you've
Yep.
experienced that yourself, guess what? You can identify it in other people, and
Precisely.
now you can take that proper measured approach rather than, hey, how do I de-escalate the situation?
And hit on that one more time, the de-escalate, Brian, because you're right
Yeah.
on you're circling the rim
Yeah.
on the bowl. I don't mean the basketball, I mean in the shitter. But the idea here is, what's the best and easiest de-escalation strategy? The gift of time and distance.
Yep.
Get thee to some distance. You can send a card, a memo, say I'm sorry, tell the concierge or the maitre d', those are the places I go to,
Yeah, right.
or tell the towel boy at the Y for you. But the idea is, you can get that message to that person that you're penitent and that you're
I am
sorry.
the towel boy at the Y.
Yes,
Greg,
you
so.
are. But if you willingly, knowingly, capriciously, arbitrarily stay in that moment,
You're now,
and
yeah,
then draw a weapon, and you have to go through all this other stuff, you don't need to do that.
yeah.
For the love of God, if you punched everybody that needs punching, your hands would look like clubs. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So you don't need to do that. And this is speaking out to the cops, your FTOs. This is speaking out to the road guy that thinks you got to prove yourself, or the female that says, well, I'm in a male-dominated environment, so I'm going to exert my pressure by either sleeping with everybody or beating everybody. That happens when we're broken humans and we don't think it out. So my thing is, training also gives us the gift of time and distance, but advanced critical thinking. So we understand more about ourselves. And once I can look in the mirror and I know me better, I generally deal with you better.
Well, yeah, not me specifically, but other humans.
No, I'm talking about humans.
Yeah.
I'm talking
So
not this meat puppet that I'm dealing with on the show every week.
So I think that's kind of a good spot to kind of bring in that understanding of what we mean when we're talking about the 4 Fs, and specifically that freeze when you identify someone in there, right? It's all about.
So folks, Brian is drawing two different parallels. So if you're on a PowerPoint, there's two different columns. So the 4 Fs are over here, some of the oldest, most primitive indicators on motivations for humans, okay? And he's talking about the fight, flight, or freeze that's over here, which is a subset of those. And both of those are hugely important, but you can overcome the urge or the autonomic reflex to freeze with training. You can reduce your limit to fight or flight by training for the event left of bang before it occurs, and that's going to give you a fighting chance when it occurs.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to wrap it up on. So I mean that kind of we covered a lot, and we had a couple of good spirals there that went into uh,
Sorry,
this
you can't go to
freeze.
the Y anymore. You get what I'm saying?
So, I'm still going. They still want their towels. So I don't
What was your
actually
buddy
even
at the
work
soup
there.
kitchen that
Just
saved you on
dirty,
that one? What?
dirty Mike, dirty
Dirty Mike
Mike,
and the
dirty
boys.
Mike and the boys.
That was it.
So I think we did a couple of that freeze part of the four Fs is obviously big because
Yes.
that's huge, and I'm glad we covered that
And you
because
don't
a
want
lot of people
your
don't.
spin the bottle to land on that, right? Okay.
Yeah. Yes, that's a good analogy, right? So it could land on one of those things, and if I'm not prepared or I'm overwhelmed by events, I may go into that freeze,
Yes.
which is the worst one out of all of them, right?
Not
Because then
desirable.
you do nothing, and then handling some with identifying people who are in that moment themselves, right, and how to handle that a little bit
Yes.
better, so you don't then become a contributing
You don't turn
factor.
you don't
You don't
turn
turn a
a
robbery into a homicide, you know?
exactly. Give up the cheese, okay? And
Yeah,
sometimes you're dealing with damaged humans that have
most of the time.
a
Yeah,
debilitating mental illness, maybe in
yeah,
this situation, and you don't want to overreact because they're just being them. And so don't pour your bucket into theirs. Just
yep,
walk away. Almost
yeah.
always.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a good spot to end on. So, everyone, thanks for tuning in. And don't forget, training changes behavior.
Thank you.